not continuing, mostly just because of me, not continuously being disciplined in terms of getting the books read on time. So what I was thinking for this book club today is I wanted to kind of just share my thoughts on the book. I kind of wanted to kind of go over some things that I really took away from it. And then I kind of want to open it up to everybody and kind of give everybody the opportunity to kind of share what they got out of the book. I've always wanted to do a consistent monthly book club for the group. And so I just wanted to thank all of you guys for contributing and, you know, reading the book. And I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun. So first off, I wanted to say I have read a ton of business books, personal development books, sales books, business strategy books over the years. When I was newer in my career and I wasn't as busy as I'm today, there was a portion of my life for a little while, for a couple of years time span, where I was reading about a book every week, if not every 2 weeks. And I was pretty consistently doing that for a couple of years. And the last couple of years, I've definitely fallen off. I think last year I read 5 or 6 books all year. This year I've read this one. And so for me, this book club is just something to kind of hold me accountable, to make sure that I'm continuously setting a deadline for myself and getting through the books. And so hopefully it can kind of act as something similar for you as well, because sometimes in just the chaos of our busy lives, reading sometimes is one of the things that gets pushed into the back. But I do think that reading, first off, it keeps our minds sharp, and it just is a way of learning that's super, super helpful, I think in general, and depending on how you kind of absorb information. I'm sure some of you listen to the audiobook, and that's perfectly fine as well, so there's a lot of ways to digest a book. So anyway, I'm super excited about this. Before I kind of get into my thoughts, I wanted to just share a quick story with you guys. So when I read books, I am somebody that I love to go through a book with a pen, because I'm always taking notes. I'm underlining things that really jump out at me, and I'm just really marking up the book. So if you go through my library of any books that I've read and you kind of skim through them, they're just totally marked up to hell. And to me, that's very valuable. That's something that I really like to go back and look at, and it just reminds me of thoughts I had in real time when I was actually reading the book. And so on this book in particular, I read about page 150, and then I left it in Las Vegas. I was about 150 pages in, and I went to Medicare Con, Las Vegas for Medicare Con, and I left it in my hotel room. And I'm still kind of devastated about it, honestly, because that first 150 pages, basically all my notes and my markings are just gone. So my wife was like, "You're really upset about that?" Like, she was just like making fun of me. And I was like, "Yes, I'm actually very upset about that." So what was left of the book, and what I ended up kind of doing since I lost the book, is I went through and listened to the rest of it on audiobook. I actually listened to the entire thing, even what I already read on audiobook, and just kind of going through it, just because I'm a goof and I lost the book. But I did reorder a physical copy because I wanted a physical copy. I don't know about you guys, but this was one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm not just saying that because it's our book of the month. I took a lot away from this book. So first off, I am a big fan of Patrick Bet-David. I have been for a lot of years, watched a lot of his YouTube videos, taken in a lot of his content over the years. I remember when his channel had like 100,000 subscribers, and he interviewed like Grant Cardone and like Mark Cuban and a couple people like that, like 8 years ago. And I remember watching those videos when they first came out. And, so to see where he's kind of grown into today, he built his insurance agency. Probably most of us wouldn't agree with how he built his insurance agency, or maybe not necessarily how, but like you wouldn't want to be a part of it, right? It's very MLM-ish and that kind of thing. But you can't argue with the results of kind of what he grew the company to. And then of course he sold it to Integrity. I heard him say on a podcast recently that he walked away with like 200 million bucks from the acquisition. So super knowledgeable guy, somebody that, is one of the greats in terms of agency building, in our space. And I got took a lot away from the book. So kind of going back and kind of going through the steps itself. So there's master knowing yourself. I really liked that portion of the book, those beginning chapters, because it's just one of those things where too often when people are giving business advice, or when, you're kind of reading through a book, or you're trying to learn some kind of strategy, it's trying to fit everybody in one box, right? Like everybody's the same. Everybody should want the same things. And I thought he did a really good job of, just kind of laying it out to be like, listen, we're not all going to want the same things. This is how I'm wired. This is what I want. I want to, I want to grow the biggest business I possibly can, but you might not want that. And you got to cater, your moves and your strategy to what you want as an individual, and be truthful to yourself, right? Be real with yourself. And I found that message very refreshing. Of course, I'm extremely driven, extremely motivated person. I want to take over the world. And so a lot of what he was talking about in terms of himself, I very much aligned with, but I can see how not everybody has that same kind of aspirations, and how you have to kind of cater to what you want. Ultimately, the book is about chess. It's about how to be a chess master. He talks about it multiple times, a chess master CEO. He makes that reference to over and over again in the book. And it's really about just thinking multiple steps ahead in everything that you do. There's a lot of beauty to that. The second step was master the ability to reason, which I thought was, I might have taken the most, either second step or third step. I took probably the most away. I got something out of all of them, but the ability to reason, really just basically being able to find what motivates people, for one, and that, kind of caters to step one as well. And also, being able to find out what actually matters to somebody, to be able to talk to them about it, to negotiate with them, to kind of really motivate them properly. That part of it, that part was extremely good, I felt. Step three, master building the right team. I got a ton out of that step. Multiple chapters kind of make up each step, right? But like that step in particular, I got a ton out of it. And he goes deep into hiring the right people, how to handle it when people aren't working out, how to, develop people and really kind of be a positive light in people's life that you're working with, right? And it's very refreshing, and because so many people, I feel like when they talk about, building a team or hiring or anything like that, they're like, there is no, there's very few aspects that I see when people train on that, where they're like, they're looking at people as people, and it's like, he goes through multiple times in the book, like, if you have to lay somebody off, you don't have to scream and yell at them, which is true. You know what I mean? Like, and that's something I've had to learn as a boss and an employer. It's good to, and I love his approach about, like, even when he lets somebody go, he's mentoring them on the way out, to where, like, you might not be a fit for this position, but from what I've observed, these are your skill sets, and you might be better with something like this, right? And like, but at the same time, not being a doormat and being stern when you need to. Is just a very good balance of what I feel like you need to have as an employer to approach things. I loved that chapter. I love that, not that chapter, but I love that step in particular. It was great. And then step four, master strategy to scale. The strategy portion of it got so into the weeds, and I just love that. At this point in my career, I'm not sure how you guys feel about this, but like, I am so not into, like I used to be, the motivational rah-rah books. I mean, every now and then they're cool to read and everything like that, but like, I feel like I liked those more when I was younger in my career and just getting started, right? And like, now I just don't get anything out of it. I'm just like, I'm bored by it. I really like X's and O's, real strategy books, stuff that gives me actual, like, tangible ideas that I can implement into my business and into my company. And that step gave so much of that, in terms of, like, crunching numbers, right? Like the details that he went into in terms of the numbers. Like, there was that example he gave about the processing software, right? And I believe, if I remember right, like, you guys remember this part, he talked about how it would cost the company, I think he said 2 million or something like that, and or a million, 2 million. I don't remember the number, but yeah, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, it was 1 million. And on the surface level, it looked like, oh, it saves us $50K a year, take us 20 years to really make up the difference, not worth it. But then he really digs into the growth metrics and kind of what the company's going to be. And like, not everybody thinks at things at such a, you know, such a specific level. And you have to do that to make the right decisions, right? And I love everything that he talked about in terms of like becoming an expert decision maker. And when you're becoming an expert decision maker, you're not just gambling or shooting from the hip. You know, you're not taking 1,000 years to make a decision either. I think I'm of the belief that like you can take too long to decide something, and then the opportunity has passed you up altogether. That's certainly the other extreme. But at the same time, it's looking at things and really like being able to kind of pick it apart and ask the right questions to be able to make the right decision in your business. And I got a lot out of that. I took a lot out of that step. And then, of course, step 5, master power plays, which is understanding competition, understanding your market, understanding how to form the right alliances. All of that was fantastic. I believe that's the part where he talks about, you know, taking on Goliath in your industry. Patrick actually made a YouTube video. If you guys like that part of the book, he made a YouTube video years ago on valuetainment that was called basically that, how to take on the Goliath in your industry. I remember watching it years ago. He lays out a lot of the same information, but essentially like there's somebody in your space or multiple people in your space that are the big fish, right? And like as a smaller company, how can you best outmaneuver them, right? What do you have to really think about? And a lot of it comes down to they get comfortable, they rest on their laurels, they're big and it takes them longer to shift and make adjustments. You being smaller are more flexible, you're more quick moving, you can take more risks, all of the above. So that's a great video. If you guys enjoyed that part of the book, I highly recommend that video on the Valuetainment channel. But yeah, guys, I loved the book. I got so much out of it. Like I took down some quotes from it too, like everybody likes you until you're a competitor, especially a formidable one. I'm like, that is really true. You know, like I think about that in my own business. Like there's a lot of people that, not to get too personal with you guys, but like there's a lot of people that I have been friends with, and then as soon as I start competing with them more, all of a sudden they're like, oh, you know, I get the cold shoulder from them. And it's a little bit like, oh, you know, like you were cool when you weren't a threat to me. And that is very a human reaction, you know? And so there's just, anyway, I don't want to take all the time just kind of talking myself. I kind of wanted to, you know, kind of give everybody in here a chance to kind of pop in and, you know, just kind of share anything that they got out of the book that really jumped out at them. So anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I loved it. I very much think I'll read it a second time this year. Because there was a lot in there, and I'm sure there's stuff I'll catch that I maybe missed the first time around. Some of my favorite books I'll end up reading like 4 or 5 times over the course of a multiple year time period, and I could see this book being one of those. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna take myself off of the spotlight. If anybody wants to kind of pop in and kind of share their thoughts in the book, feel free.
This video is brought to you by the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Guys, have you ever wanted to get around other professionals and the best of the best in the Medicare space if you're a Medicare agent? There's something to be said about networking and learning what other people are doing around the country, and they might just have some ideas that you may never have thought of before. It's also something to be said about learning from the best of the best. The most successful people in the insurance space collaborate, talk with others, and they have a mentality that we all are in this together and we share ideas and grow together. The 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event for Medicare agents. It is highly affordable. It has a great reputation of being some of the best content you're going to find at any event. There's so many events out there that are nothing but pitch fests, or half of the speakers are employees for the agency that host the event, and there's not really any real agency builders, or very few that actually take the stage and speak. At the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit, you get nothing but the best of the best talent from all over the industry. It's not based on hierarchy. It's not based on anything like that. We all are coming together as Medicare agents to grow and learn and get better. You can get information on who the speakers are for this year's event and ticket prices down in the link of this description. We would love to see you at the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit.
Hey, Christian, this is Robert Owen. How are you?
Hey, Robert. We're doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I had a couple things, being just kind of a one-man shop and everything, there were some things that jumped out in the book at me. Early on, it was in the step 2 about processing and analyzing the issue and so forth. And it gave 3 different approaches to dealing with an issue. You can find someone to blame, you can find a safe space where to escape, or you can process by taking responsibility. And I started, when you reflect on that on my own, I'm thinking, man, I find a place to escape a lot more than I really would like to, because with our cell phones and everything, it's easy to say, this has got me down. Let me pick up and play a little Monopoly Go, or Words with Friends, or check the baseball scores, or whatever it might be. So that was the first thing I got out of the book. But in being a one-person shop, a lot of stuff in the middle in steps 3 and 4 was very informative back from my days where I was a manager and stuff. And I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, and went through a lot. But it was getting into that step 5 where I really got some more, I guess, for use for now, was when he was talked about turning off the noise, and he referenced that Science Foundation study where it says 80%, I'm sorry, on the average day, a person has between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts, and 80% of them are negative, and 95% of them are from the previous day. I thought, wow, I got to start, it makes you sit back and just, where am I at in that thing? And then I think a couple of pages over, he comes into he talks about his physique and how he would go to the gym and he would see all these people with already bulked out and everything, and he could barely lift just the bar. And so a guy kind of took him under his wing and said, hey, these 2.5-pound weights are your best friend. I want to see you go up, at 5 pounds. And he said that was kind of embarrassing. But being a one-person thing, I find myself in that situation with business, especially you hear people go, oh, I wrote 500 apps during AEP or this or that. And you're thinking, but if I look back over my business for the last 3 or 4 years, I'm kind of in that 2.5-pound increment, moving up every year instead of just going from 0 to 100 right away. Well, that made me kind of feel good, because I had to take a step back. Actually, I took a step back after talking with you a couple of years ago. I didn't have to compete with everybody, but that kind of reinforced that. And then I think that was and then there was a line in that chapter. It said the commitment to constantly beating your prior best is far the simplest and best proven formula to eventually find yourself at the top of your game in your industry. So I don't have to compete with anybody else. I've got to improve daily, monthly, yearly over myself and what I can do. So it's mainly what I took out of the book, where I'm at right now with my business and so forth. So, but it was a great book. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing, Robert. Yeah, I think all of that is great, insight from the book, because a lot of it was, there was such a huge emphasis on the book, especially at the beginning, of knowing you, and like, I can't remember exactly the wording of it, but there was a spot in the book where he says, people always say, the best person to know is to know your enemy, know your spouse, know this person, know that person, but the person you spend the most time with is you. The person you need to know the best is you. And I mean, I've always kind of had that philosophy, but I think it was just really rained home for me in that portion of the book, because, like, no matter what level you're at, it's very easy to compare yourself to somebody above you. No matter what level you're at, there's somebody that's higher up than you or farther along than you, right? Like, I had this conversation before I read this book maybe a couple months ago with an agent. They're like, I compare myself to people like you, meaning me, people like this person, people like this person. And I'm like, well, you might not realize this, but I compare myself without thinking about it sometimes to this person and that person and this person. I'm like, I might be very far along, but these people are way farther. And so I think it happens to us at every level, and it's a universal thing. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing.
I had a couple cool insights from the book. So one of them, I really liked what you were talking about, like knowing yourself. And I had just started working with a new business coach, and the very first thing he did was a disc profile on me and a couple other like personality tests, just really figuring out like what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and then being able to fill in like my business, employees or, people that I need to help me in those weak spots. So I thought that was really helpful just as a business owner, knowing like, okay, I'm not good at this, so I need to outsource that or bring somebody on to take care of that responsibility. But knowing yourself, I really liked the part where he was talking about writing down his values and even sharing that with his children on a regular basis. And I kind of look at management a lot like parenting. So to me, sharing your values and your company values with your employees on a regular basis is either going to like, they're going to resonate with it and like stick with it and honor it or leave. Right.
Yep.
So I think that's a great way to just maintain your integrity throughout your business, is if you're always telling people, these are our values. And if you don't align with that, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. And then the other part I thought was really awesome when he talked about like, every day is urgent, because it's really easy as your business grows and you become, your income grows, to get lazy or to get complacent. But that's when you become most vulnerable, right? Most vulnerable to losing your top salespeople or to losing your edge or losing your brand image because you're not performing at the level that you used to. So those were the things that I took away from it. I didn't get to read the last section, so I'm sure I'll get a lot from that because I'm at that place where I'm trying to figure out how to scale and need wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jackie. And all of that is so spot on. I think you'll love that last section. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I finished it last night myself. I was on that last section myself. So I was just, pushing to finish. But there was another part that I just thought of too, that I don't know if anybody else kind of jumped out to them at all, but like, there are some aspects of things, like the dark aspects of things, that I get kind of into, like I get into it a little bit, like the spot where the parts where he talked about, like writing down, keeping basically like a log of people that have doubted you, haters, things like that. Like that really resonated with me too. I actually did that. When I first started reading the book, I went through and I made a list. Like I went back as far as I could think of any person in my entire life that's ever like doubted me or made me feel like I couldn't do something or something like that. And I made that list. And every couple of days I've been going back and looking at it, and I'm like, I'm into that kind of stuff. I'm into kind of like that fuel, those dark feelings a little bit as the fuel. I know that's kind of a controversial thing that he put in the book there. Like there's a lot of people that, they're like, positivity, bro, Zen, like, bro. And like, I'm into that too. But like, I do think that some of the most motivating forces sometimes are, hardships and not feeling good about something, yeah, so that was just something I thought about too. Like I got a lot out of that part of it as well, because, and I'm sure everybody in here kind of knows that feeling of kind of being doubted. And like, we've all been doubted a lot in our lives. And for me, like one of my motivating factors early on in my career was really just proving to people that they were not right about me, and maybe proving to myself that they weren't right about me. I think we all go through that. I think that's a human thing, but I loved that too. I kind of, like I actually, a book I did finish reading last year, the end of last year, was the 48 Laws of Power, and it really gets into that kind of stuff too. That's a dark ass book. It really is, but it's fantastic. I highly recommend it too. But it's a long book. It's like 600 pages. It takes forever. It took me like months to read it. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention that because that was something I thought of. What else, guys? Who else has some thoughts? Let's see. Okay, Brianna said, I loved the team building portion of the book. Yeah, me too, Brianna. I'm a very right brain, chaotic, creative person. One of my biggest weaknesses is being afraid of formulas. Zoom is like blocking out that other word. Okay, and not always thinking analytically. But I found myself in a position within my team where my personality complements that of my colleagues. That's awesome. That's great. One thing I've learned that I definitely took out of the book, there's definitely things I learned from reading the book that you know we're going to implement. But like what I've always learned in terms of like the team I keep around me. So he mentioned several times in the book, you don't want yes people around you. You want people that are willing to challenge you. And I like that. I have people on my team that are not afraid to be like, hey, this is a problem, or you know, this isn't being handled correctly. We need to do this. And I definitely like that. I think there's a balance between challenge and disrespect, right? Like you don't want people that are going to disrespect you necessarily, but you want them that are going to be, you know, blunt with you and real and honest with you on certain things. But also people that, you know, have strengths where you're weak, right? Like and I think filling out your company is great. Like you're going to have strengths as the owner and the founder that, you know, probably no one else is going to have. But like, it's real common for an owner or a founder to not be super organized. So that's me, right? Like I'm not super organized. I've gotten better over the years, but it's never going to be my strong suit. It's never going to be like my superpower. So I have people around me that are organized, that keep, you know, that help me stay on track with things. Probably every single day, I'm like, what am I doing today? You know, like I have a calendar and everything, but like, I'll need reminders on this. I'm like, why am I doing this again? Like, who is this I'm talking to? Like, what? And my team definitely helps steer me right. So like, I think, you know, what you said there is, you know, having a team where they complement your strengths. I think that's super key. And I found that to be super valuable in my company too. Cool, guys. Anybody got any other thoughts they want to share about the book?
Well, I was thinking that we were gonna like do the book club and just like over a period of time for some reason. So like I had read about 30% of the book about a year ago. And then like I was like, oh, I always wanted to finish that, so I'll join this book club. But then I only read about the first 5% to reread it for meeting. But I will say that the first part that I read was the reread was the part on knowing yourself, and that was really important. Like it really spoke to me because I'm still at that stage where I'm not exactly sure what I want out of the career, whether I really want to just like work all the time and grow it and scale it, or if I want to just like I make a good living more than I ever made at any other job. And then like if I don't want to, I could just work 8 hours a day and then just continue that and maintain it. And so like I really love doing things at night. I like going to martial arts. I like doing, you know, to spend time with friends and family and the church and all that. So makes me kind of think, which I gave up for the first couple of years for the business, but then I started getting it back after I got more comfortable. And then it makes me think, well, I'm not sure, you know, but I also really want to be successful too. I see these people at Medicare Con selling their business to a big company. Like, well, I wish I could do that someday, you know? So maybe it is worth it to just really just dive 100% back into it and keep pushing until I get to be great. But what I think, Patrick, that David said that really struck to me on that first 5% is he's like that the unhappiest people are the people that are really ambitious, but also somewhat lazy. And then they don't really want to like do what it takes to become great, but they want to be great. So I don't want to be in that either. If I decide I want to just kind of just be normal, then I just want to be happy to be a normal too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I appreciate you sharing that, Brad. Like there's a story he told in the book that I think was super, like it really stuck with me. And if I mess up any part of the story, guys, like jump in if I like get it wrong. But the message I think reigns true. So like I think he had an agent that was working with him in the business in the early years, and that person basically was that exactly what you described, Brad. Like they want to be super successful, but at the same time they're kind of lazy. But the guy who was putting so much pressure on himself, comparing himself to people, he's just beating himself up all the time. And Patrick asked him some really pointed questions, like some very like blunt questions. I'm trying to remember exactly the way he worded the question. I think he said, he's like, can I be honest with you? He's like, I want to be honest with you, but it's going to sting a bit. Are you okay with that? And I was like, what a great question for one. Like, I'm going to steal that when I'm speaking to people. So the guy takes a minute, thinks about it. He goes, yeah. And he goes, I think and more or less what he said, if I remember correctly, was like, I think you want to be great, but you don't do the work to be great. And I think ultimately, like what that guy came to the conclusion on through that conversation was, I want to do well. I want to be there for my child's activities. I want to be there for sporting events. I want to be around my kids. I want to sleep in sometimes. And, I don't want to give those things up in the pursuit of building this massive, great, giant company that would be sold one day. Because ultimately, like to build a company that be sold one day, like it's one of those things where you miss a lot of things. You miss a lot of dinners, you miss a lot of events. I try to do my best as a father to balance them too. And I only have one kid. I don't know how you guys do it that have like multiple kids. I would like, I don't know what I do. But like I do my best to try to balance them, but I do miss things from time to time, and it's not cool. It's not fun, but I try to balance it as best as I can. But like the decision I think needs to come from what is it that I want to do and what is it do I want to be? And is what I want to be, am I willing to give up what it's going to take to give it up? Or do I want to make a great living and still have those things? And I think that's a real conversation that a lot of people need to have with themselves. And the book, I've never seen a book lay it out, I think, as well as this one did in terms of that. But yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer necessarily. It just depends on who you are, and kind of what you want. Okay. Oh yeah, Brianna, I'm glad you brought this up. So the intrapreneur versus entrepreneur section of the book was also great. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of forgot about that. I felt seen reading that. I seen myself becoming indispensable to my team, and one day not an employee, but also not a CEO. That's not for everyone, and I'm relieved to admit to myself that it's not for me. I enjoy being in more supportive roles, if that makes sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I think there are roadmaps and ways to become not an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur inside of the company, hence the term intrapreneur, right? And he talks about that a lot in the book. And he talks about giving people equity that really, but giving them roadmaps to really kind of get there. I'll be honest, like, I don't know if we'll be giving anybody equity in our company, but one thing I did take away from it is like trying to build out more incentive structures internally to give people something really lofty to kind of shoot for, but also that makes them feel super excited about coming to work every day. I think we have a great culture in our office already, but I got a lot out of that part of the book. there's that part in the book where he talks about that company he was working for, and his goal was to be CEO. So he writes the letter to the management, and they were like more threatened by it more than anything else. They were like, ooh, you know, like, and by them not handling that properly, like they totally, you know, I mean, him staying on in that company, right, looking at what he became, probably would have made that company grow exponentially, right? And so as an employer, I looked at it from that perspective, but as somebody that's an employee, I think a perspective to look at it from is, how can I make myself, like you said, indispensable and unreplaceable? And how can I find a way to bring as much value in exchange, but also make my intentions clear to the leadership? I want to grow into this, but with the company, and I want to do it by helping the company grow, and having that clear dialogue. And like, for me as a business owner, if someone came to me and said that, I would be so excited for that person because they get it, right? They understand. And so many people today are just like, you know, I come into work, I do the bare minimum. I've worked at some place 4 months, 5 months. Now I want a raise. I want more money, you know, and like, that's not the right attitude. Like, how do you bring the most high levels of value to the company you're working for? And if it's a company that's worth working for, they'll reward you by when you do that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was a great section as well, the entrepreneur part.
And like on that note, just understanding what motivates people is really helpful too, because like some people are motivated by money, and others, like he said, somebody wanted a work from home day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I thought about, you know, when I start growing, like beyond my one person now, doing a questionnaire when you like bring somebody on of like what is important to them. How do they like to be rewarded? Do they want like a bonus, or do they like a spa day, or do they want a day off to spend with family? And just kind of implementing that so you are meeting their needs instead of just a blanket like, oh, everybody gets a bonus, and they're like, I don't care about that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so true too. You know, not like, some people are money motivated, some people aren't. Some people are more, you know, having an ideal schedule motivated, or having a flexibility of working from home sometimes motivated. And yeah, I mean, I think understanding your people is everything. And that was a huge thing in the book. And I think we've always tried to do that internally, but like there's definitely some strategies I took away that I'm going to be using to kind of help us do that, even a better job at that. I mean, yeah, I loved that part of the book so much. Like, I loved this whole book, guys. Like, I really did. Like, I enjoyed this book significantly. So there's so many things. There's so many things in this book. Like, it's a gem. And I'm not just saying that because it was our book of the month. Like, I really enjoyed it a ton. Cool, guys. Well, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about next month's book, and we'll kind of close this thing up. First off, I want to say I appreciate you guys for coming on. I thought that there would be a smaller turnout with something like a book, because just like I did a presentation for a conference in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I did some research for it, and the research came out that the average American reads half a book a year. I don't think people are super excited to read a book. Like, when we put the idea up, does anyone want to do a book club? We got like hundreds and hundreds of responses, like, yeah. And then not every, there's very few people that actually read the book, which is fine. I expected that. But I really appreciate you guys reading the book and participating in, like, I think these are great, because I think, again, like I said at the beginning, they'll hold all of us accountable in actually getting the reading done. Sometimes in our everyday lives, we get really busy, not just with work, but with family. Like, Jackie, you're a mom, and you juggle a lot of different things and wear a bunch of different hats. So like, it's tough. It's hard sometimes, but I think having a group together where we're like an accountability group for each other, and then we can kind of come together and share ideas, it's just, we get so much more out of it than just reading the book. And so I'm I'm super excited that we're doing this going forward. So the book, I was inspired by one of the books he mentioned in the book, in Patrick Bet-David's book. So there's a book he mentioned in there that I had read years ago, probably 10 years ago, and I barely remember anything in it, but I remember it being super impactful. So I decided to pick that for the next book club. It was on my bookshelf. It was one I already had, so I was like, oh, perfect. I'm like, this one works. I decided to choose the 5 Love Languages book. I read it years ago. It's not a very long book. For one, like the print is relatively big. It's probably 180 pages, give or take, maybe 190. Yeah, it's about 188. So it's a pretty quick read. The idea for this one is sometimes people look at this book, and when I first read it, it was like I was reading it because of like relationships, like dating and things like that. It was like right before I met my wife. And like I was super into like learning about that kind of stuff, I think the book originally is probably made for relationships and dating and things like that, but the book ultimately helps you be able to determine how people in your life like to receive, affection or compliments or anything like that. And that goes for your employees, that goes for your clients. It's able to kind of spot these different personality types and be able to work with them more effectively. So I think it's every bit as relevant for business and for what we do as a salesperson, as an employer, as a business person. Like our business is relationships at the end of the day. And so I think, being able to understand the different ways that people, really respond when you work with them, and being able to spot people's personality types, I think is really huge. I remember really liking the book when I did read it a long time ago, but I thought it would be a good one to reread. I thought it was an easy read, so I thought it would be a quick one for everybody. And yeah, so that's the book I picked for the next 30 days. Let me look at the calendar. I believe what we're going to do, but I want to make sure it's not like on a weekend or something. It is on a weekend. Okay, never mind. What I'm thinking is we do Tuesday the 4th, if everybody is all right with that. Is when we set the 4th of June, by the way. Not the 4th of this month. You guys have 3 days to read the book. No. But the 4th of June, coming back together and doing this again with this next book. And so if you didn't quite see the book, again, it's The 5 Love Languages, The Secrets to Love That Lasts by Gary Chapman. And I'll also post it in the Facebook group, and we'll make another invite for it with a Zoom link and everything like that. But yeah, I would have done it on that Wednesday, but that Wednesday is the day that my team is actually traveling to Savannah for the summit. So we will be on planes all day. But yeah, Tuesday, the day before, I think is perfect. So yeah, guys, that's the one that we're going to be reading for the next 30 days. And of course, if you guys have any suggestions or any requests for books, shoot them over to me. You can email them to me. You can message me on Facebook, and I'm definitely open to requests for like for future ones, for ones coming up. But yeah, guys, this was fun. I enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed reading the book a great deal. I'm still devastated. I lost my original book with all my notes in it. I called it. I didn't call MGM. Someone was like, "Did you call MGM?" I'm like, "They're not gonna give it. They're not gonna care. They just threw it away. I guarantee it. Like, someone like a hotel. But maybe I should have just called. I don't know, but I didn't. I guess I didn't care that much because I didn't call. But yeah, guys. Thank you all for being here. This was super fun. And yeah, I mean, yeah, and if you guys don't have time, that's a great point. If Brianna, if you guys don't have time to read the books, listen to the audiobooks. Like if you didn't get a chance to finish your next 5 moves, the audiobook is read by Patrick Bet-David himself. So it's really good. So like even if you go back and listen to that on the audiobook, highly suggest it. But yeah, guys, so I guess we'll see you in about a month. We'll send out the invites in the Facebook group and everything, and hope to see you guys all here next month. And appreciate you guys for being here and being part of the club. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Christian.
Thanks, Jackie.